Mr. Britton, let me ask you the question.
I'm very sorry.
Let me ask you the question.
Can I just give the explanation?
What explanation? I haven't asked you the question yet.
But I want to give the answer.
Freedom of choice. Group versus equal. State versus individual.
Sorry, James.
This is a crisis that has developed over a period of time, and it's not just a one-off thing, and it's not just something that is going to be in the papers for a few days and then goes away. It's something that symbolises a deeper problem, and that is, what should the relationship of the BBC be to the government of the day?
People are bound to see this as proof that the BBC is only an arm of government, which of course is not true, but that's how it's going to be seen. And journalists working for the BBC abroad are going to come under a lot of pressure and a lot of criticism.
And so far we have been able to say, no, we are not like Radio Moscow and we are not like the Voice of America, because we are independent. And this move has caused all sorts of critics, from Moscow to Yugoslavia, to Morocco, to Libya, including American media referring to the BBC as a state-controlled organization.
It's clearly intolerable that all of the governors have been appointed by this government. Several of them are members of the party that has formed this government, and the chairman of the Board of Governors has a brother in the cabinet. The vice chair is a former Conservative Party candidate in election. It is so nakedly a partisan group.
What's happened is this government, unfortunately, ever since they came into office, have only appointed people to public office who supported them. And of course the Board of Governors are government appointees, and sadly have shown themselves to be government toadies.
It has to be borne in mind that many people who work for external services were attracted here in the beginning because they found it intolerable or impossible to work as journalists and broadcasters in countries where the state controlled the press and the media. And that's what they thought, we were free, and that's why they came here. And now they feel very, very bitter and very disillusioned and very angry. So one would expect them to cave in, but the Board of Management should not have done. The Board of Management should not have accepted their decision, and they should broadcast the programme.
If you're looking at the Board of Governors, and I would also say the Board of Managers, have been pretty craven. It's all by sort of leaks, off-the-record briefings, unattributable statements and so on. They're pretty weak too. The fact that they pulled the open space programme on supergrasses, the fact that they pulled the programme discussing television and terrorism, shows that they are indeed a very weak line of resistance, like the governors.
What's the character of the BBC? What sort of people run it? Are they representative of the mix which is now our society? Why aren't there more blacks, and why aren't there more women in important places in the BBC? These questions have now to be asked.
In the same way, there's filtering mechanisms for portraying a particular worldview about women, about black people, about homosexual people, which it probably isn't conscious in the same way as those secret guidelines for terrorism, but it doesn't need to be, because the people who work in the media all agree about certain assumptions about those particular groups.
If you look at stories in relation to black issues, no one has actually done a story about South Africa yet, and why Britain won't disinvest from South Africa. And it's pretty obvious that the reasons are financial. I mean, Britain has so much money tied up in South Africa that they would lose financially if they pulled out. Now, no one has actually done a story about that yet, and I'm quite sure that if they tried to, they would come up with the same sort of censorship problems.
I've been a journalist now for 23 years, and this isn't the kind of step that I would take lightly. It's the first time ever I've been out on a picket line, out on the street. The whole issue is one of censorship. And the Northern Ireland story is a very difficult story. Many of us have been over there and we've had to cover it. And the tone of the Home Secretary's letter to the governors, where he says that even if that programme had shown the terrorists in an unfavourable light, he would still have asked the BBC not to run it. If that doesn't amount to censorship, I don't know what does. And that's a very worrying issue.
I think actually this has got more to do with embarrassing the BBC as a public entity than it has to do with censorship and programmes on Ireland. I mean, I think the most significant thing about this is that it comes at the time of a review of BBC funding and so on and so on and so on.
Press freedom has been a fringe issue before, something that you do on, you know, the Guardian agenda page, or something which is discussed on Newsnight occasionally. Now every single newspaper, every single media outlet has been discussing it.
The system of public funding through the licence fee actually guarantees a level of independence that you won't find in ITV companies, and you certainly won't find in the independent sector, who, mainly speaking, work to Channel 4. First of all, in terms of the blatant censorship of a programme like this, I mean, it is a real disaster for freedom of broadcasting in this country. But secondly, you know, if the BBC is dismantled and the licence fee is replaced by advertising, then we're all going to be out of jobs. Programme quality will necessarily suffer, because you're asking to get the same amount of output out of, you know, a smaller and smaller pie. In other words, the advertising pie. I mean, the advertising bubble is going to burst. The only hope there is for freedom of broadcasting in the end is proper funding for the industry and strong unions inside it. And I think what this really shows is that it's actually the journalists who work at the BBC and those who work in the industry who stand for freedom of press and broadcasting, not the employers, not the governors, you know, not the government even, but it's the journalists. And only when we're effectively organised, you know, can we ensure that some sense of press and broadcasting freedom persists.
And it's not just the journalists. When you see catering people, drivers, producers, directors, right across the board, technicians, BT engineers, all those people, they're saying, no, we're not going to have this. We're just going to stand up to this pressure, and we're not going to accept that the Board of Governors and the Board of Management is the BBC. We're the BBC as well, and we're saying, no, we're not the weakest line of resistance. We're the front line of resistance, because the other line has already caved in. Of course, journalists, as the primary people involved in that flow of information, they have enormous responsibility. A lot of the time they duck out of that responsibility. They don't even abide by their own code of conduct a lot of times, and they don't take on those powerful institutions trying to pressurise them.
There were some suggestions in the debate we had after the film that journalists should somehow have some self-control and that the film shouldn't have been made in the first place. Well, I think that would be a wrong atmosphere to start building up. This idea of self-control, which is censorship by the back door,